So typically, if you haven't been to one of these talks before, we kind of follow the same structure each time. So first, we'll just talk about overarching qualities or characteristics of this case, Capricorn season. Then we talk about, even if you don't have any Capricorn in your specific chart, this energy is all around us at this time. So we'll talk about, what does that mean for everybody collectively? What are things we could be focusing on, and what are the best ways to utilize the energy of this time? And then we kind of go into all the special events that may be taking place over the course of this month. And we do have a lot happening in the next 30 days until we switch to Aquarius season January 19th. So that's where we're going to begin. But yes, Capricorn season technically starts kind of like in the middle of the night tonight. It'll switch from Sagittarius and the sun will move into Capricorn. And then till about January 19th-ish is when it changes to Aquarius. So we've got a good month ahead of us. But some general things about Capricorn are, number one, it's an earth sign. So of all 12 astrology signs, we've got 4 different types, either an earth sign, an air sign, a fire sign, or a water sign. And so earth is kind of the qualities you expect when you think about the earth around us, right? The trees, the dirt, the flowers, the plants. So Capricorn season is it's a time when things are very structured. Capricorn energy is interesting. They tend to be sometimes a little bit reserved, like they're not always the most gregarious or outgoing of people upon first glance. They can be a little bit more serious, a little bit more on the conservative side sometimes. And Capricorns, I feel like, always tend to present as very mature. Like they're people who kind of seem like an authority figure, even if they're a little bit younger or don't have that much life experience. They just kind of tend to project that aura about themselves, which I think is really cool. But one fun tidbit about Capricorn energy, people with a lot of Capricorn energy, it's like they're old when they're young and they get younger as they age, if that makes sense. So yeah, typically like those children are like the more serious, the more buttoned up, the more like, head down, nose to the grindstone, do what needs to be done. But then like as they get older, they tend to loosen up a little bit and realize like the gift of flexibility. I would say flexibility is something that definitely has to be learned for Capricorn. It's not something that comes super naturally to them. But as they age, typically you do start to see that coming out a little bit more, the fun, the joyous side, the flexible side. But being an earth sign, Capricorn is also very resourceful. Earth signs tend to be really good with money. So it can be twofold. Number one, being good with money, meaning that they do place a high value on money, on things that money can buy, on being comfortable. But also they can be great with budgeting. Like a Capricorn, someone with a lot of that energy might be someone who's like, okay, I gotta like check my bank account every day and I've got the spreadsheets going on and making sure that I have a budget and then I'm sticking to it. And, even if at times it might feel like they're not doing a great job of managing that, they're like way far and ahead of some of their other friends who are in the other signs there. So that's another thing. Capricorn energy tends to be very hard on itself sometimes. And sometimes that reverberates out as well. Like they can be very hard on other people, especially I would say people who are close to them, because they just have a very strong idea about the way things should be done, and this is the right way to do it and that's the wrong way to do it. And so sometimes that can spill out a little bit into external situations that they're involved in. But yes, very good with money. Capricorn energy too is very enterprising. So when I think of archetypes, like the boss or the CEO is a great archetype for Capricorn energy. They love structure, they like hierarchy and authority because it makes sense to them. It's a structure that they can follow and they know what they have to do step by step by step to get wherever it is that they want to go. Because Capricorns are very ambitious. They're very goal-oriented, very achievement-focused. So it's like they know, they're great ones for delayed gratification. Like they know that if they're here and they want to get here, they know exactly what they need to do to get there, and they're willing to put in the time, the work, and the effort to make that happen, which is super cool. They can manifest a lot of that stuff. But they're also very, like, along with that boss archetype, it's because they love to be the authority figure, to be the expert. So I think one of the best things that you can do if you have a lot of Capricorn energy in your chart is to figure out what is it that you're super passionate about, and then how can you, sign up for the webinars, take the courses, do the workshops to help yourself become an expert in that particular area, because I feel like that is where they can really shine. I once had an astrologer say to me that they were like, keep in mind, it's not always connected to work or things like that, because they're like, someone has a super strong Capricorn energy, but they're like, it's a teenage boy who's way into video games, like this dude is gonna be super good at video games and he's gonna like win all the videos. So she's like, it's just whatever that they care about, whatever they're passionate about, they put all their chutzpah, all their energy into that, into perfecting that, which is really cool. But then also, you know, this Capricorn energy tends to be very, very stable and very grounding and calming. So I tend to think of Capricorns, I like the imagery of, you know, if you imagine that there's a really big storm coming on the ocean and you see the waves like crashing into the shore. Capricorn people are like the rock that the waves kind of crash over, and it's like, no matter how many times that happens, they're just there. Like, they're calm, they're cool, they're collected, they got it going on, you know what I mean? Whereas other people are like, oh my God, what's happening? So yes, they're very strong people. Typically that can be in their body, but also mentally. It's like they just, they're not ones to tend to get way too caught up in emotions. The downside of that could be that sometimes Capricorn energy is, they tend to like subjugate emotions underneath logic and rational thought, and they're like, okay, I'm just not even gonna let myself go here to the emotional level. So one of the things that Capricorns are here to learn is also how to balance, like, okay, yes, I wanna be on my A game and I want people to believe that I can handle things and whatever, but also recognizing that not every day is a great day. And I do have emotions and feelings, and it's okay to feel those. That doesn't mean I'm any less good at the things that I'm doing. It just means that everybody has that dimension to themselves. So one of the things that Capricorns are learning is about that, how to appreciate emotion for what it is without letting it kind of rule over you. And yeah, sometimes Capricorn can present as a little bit like stoic or a little bit, people could accuse them sometimes of being a little cold, but again, it's more that idea of they're just not gonna let the emotion take over, and for other people that's hard to understand because not everyone operates that way. But yes, so all those things, it's a very like strong, grounded, earthy sign, Capricorn. So what should we do with this energy at this time? It's no coincidence to me that the beginning of the new calendar year for us, January 1st, always falls during Capricorn season, because when we think about Capricorn energy being super goal oriented and wanting to achieve those goals and setting up measurable steps to like make progress towards the things that you want to do, that's typically what we do at the beginning of the year, right? It's like, oh, what are your resolutions? What are you writing down? What's on your vision board? You know, all that kind of stuff. So it is a really, really good time to, number one, kind of reflect, of course, on what's taken place in 2019, but number two, to be like, okay, brand new year here in 2020, what is it that I want to manifest this year? What type of abundance do I want to experience? And being really pragmatic about how you can make that happen. So it's not just, I think it starts with the vision board type energy, right? It's like you've got these ideas, you have these dreams, maybe it's kind of an image that pops up for you of this is what I want my life to look like or to feel like. But then what Capricorn energy is really good at helping us do during this time is to say, okay, that's where you're going. What do the steps look like in January? And then what are the steps in February and March, etc. So, you know, you can get as in-depth with that as you want to, but I would say definitely at least maybe give yourself some time over the next week or so to think about, at least in January and February, what is it that I'm working towards, or what are some long-term goals I have here that I can start chipping away at right now? Thinking about, you know, small steps towards that. I also think it's a great time to consider, along those lines of being the expert or the authority figure on something, what is it that you are interested in becoming an expert on? And then are there classes you can sign up for? Are there people you can talk to? Is there a mentorship that you can be a part of? Just helping to kind of hone your skills and your craft, whatever that might be for you. I also think, you know, when we think about Capricorn energy being connected to maturity, are there areas in your life where you would like to mature a little bit? And then I think reflecting also at the same time on work, since Capricorn is a very business-oriented sign in whatever way, you know, that looks different for each of us. But where are you at work-wise? Are you happy with where you're at? Great. If so, keep doing it. If you'd like to reevaluate and potentially make some changes in 2020, it's a really good energy to be focusing specifically on that facet of life as well. And what might we want to change and how can we change that at this time? Another thing though too, that I think is, you know, Capricorns are very much like, they can get all their shit done always, but sometimes that's not easy, right? One of the hardest things for them, I think, is to admit that they need help and then to ask for that help. So one thing I'm gonna challenge us all to do moving into the new year is to, as you kind of take stock of where your life is at right now, Are there areas in which you can be delegating? Are there areas that you can lean on people, you know, trusted people in your life that you're close to? And how can you let yourself be a little bit more vulnerable to say, like, you know what? I can do it all by myself, but I don't have to do it all by myself type of energy, if that makes sense. Any questions about that so far? No? Okay. It feels very serious in here, which is good. Capricorn is a very serious type of energy. Everyone's like, yeah, goals, okay, got it. All right, so when we think about kind of breath work or energy work or anything we can be working on during Capricorn season to help support us, the first thing that comes up is, and if you guys have been to this talk before, you know, but every astrological sign is connected to different parts of the body. And Capricorn is connected to literally our bone structure as well as our teeth. So this is a very good time over the next month to be like, what's happening in my mouth? Like, are you brushing your teeth? Are you flossing? Don't go to the dentist. I just got 2 fillings the other day. It was very troubling. But yeah, just kind of reassessing, like, are you taking really good care of your oral health? You might already be, or you might not be. So something to think about. But also knowing that it's connected to the bone structure and the joints, I always feel like it's a great time to, you know, work on strengthening. For example, if we want to help with bone health, having strong muscles helps with that. So Capricorn energy is definitely about like taking the exercise classes and showing up and having a routine and kind of being dedicated in that type of way too to our physical health. So how can you refocus on some of that if maybe that got away from you a little bit in the last couple months of 2019? I also would suggest too, like a float tank. There's a bunch of places that you can float here in Denver, and if you haven't done it, because that weightlessness just helps to take the pressure off of the bones, off of the joints. It could be a great thing to work into your month. Same thing too, if you do any type of aerial stuff like aerial yoga, or sometimes even at fitness studios, they have a stall bar, you know, that you can reach up for and you hang from it. Anything that helps to take or create that sense of weightlessness will help to relieve some of the pressure that you might be feeling in the bones and the joints just from your everyday wear and tear type of stuff. The one thing I will caution is Capricorn stuff especially can be tough with the knees. So like, yes, it's a good time to get back on our fitness game, but I would say don't try to overdo it. Like also make sure that you're taking proper rest and care, and you're not doing something that's like crazy hard on the joints 4 times a week. Like make sure to switch it up, that you be kind to your body, okay? Also in restorative yoga, I think any type of inversion, legs up the wall. If you've been in class with me before, you've probably done Stonehenge pose where you like set up some blocks and you put a bolster on top and you swing your legs up there, laying in that pose for a few minutes, a couple nights a week before bed. All that stuff is great just to allow the body a little bit of time to rest. You can pay a little more attention to your physical structure. The other thing, similar to what we did at the beginning of class, this is a great time to focus on strengthening that root chakra energy. Because Capricorn is like the solid foundation from which everything else in our life, all the other energies can express themselves really well if that energy is healthy. So same thing, in the root chakra, you know, we can't work on our sacral, which is our creative self-expression, emotional bodies. We can't work on our third chakra, which is about our personal power and how we show up in the world. If this chakra isn't in balance, none of the other stuff can be, just by nature of them all being connected. So it's kind of like building things from the ground up. So whether that be just doing different meditations, you know, if you have a meditation app, or I'm sure you can find stuff on YouTube that's specific to the root chakra. I know Spotify has different playlists that connect to the root chakra, and you can hear the sounds, the meditation seed sounds. Also doing any work, I think I recommend this every season, but like I'm big on Reiki or different types of energy work. So maybe giving yourself an opportunity to see a practitioner who can kind of help to clear out and make sure, because from that place, we build a solid foundation knowing that that we feel safe, that we feel that life, you know, has our back, so to speak, and that's what really helps us to be able to shine, I think, at our brightest. Also, massage is great. I know I recommended that during Scorpio season, but also especially when we think about bones and stuff and joints during Capricorn season, get yourself a massage, treat yourself. I feel like no one can be opposed to that, right? So yeah, those are things we think like yogically or energetically that we want to be focusing on during Capricorn time. And now we come to the upcoming events. So I'm going to go like from smallest to biggest. So first things first, this is a really heavy Earth time. We've got starting tomorrow, the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. Next week, the Moon will also be in Capricorn. So 4 to 5 planets in the next month, plus the planet Uranus is in the constellation of Taurus right now, which is also an earth sign. So we've got 6 out of the 10 planetary bodies in earth signs. So that is a serious time to focus on work, the practical matters of our lives, how we structure our days, all of that. It's just, the energy is going to be super supportive of that right now. So yes, the next 30 days might not feel like the most like fun, free, I had the best time of my life this month type of energy, but it's going to feel really good to take care of your shit, if that makes sense. That's how I would say it. Definitely a great time to focus on work, as we already talked about. I put not necessarily a time for big, flashy moves, but rather, yes, practical, rational decisions. Although one thing I will say is, don't be cut off from your emotions. Don't be cut off from your heart center and what your heart truly desires, because the whole point of having a plan, of making step-by-step progress, is to get to whatever it is that your heart really wants, so still remembering to stay in touch with that, but then using kind of that practical, hardworking, steadfast energy to move you more in that direction. So that should be helpful during this time. Before we get to the Saturn Pluto thing, so next week, what's really interesting is that we are going to have a new moon, and it's going to be Christmas night. So depending on if you're traveling for the holidays, it's going to be like 10 something at night in Denver, and then potentially a little later if you're in Central Time or East Coast. It's going to happen at 4 degrees of Capricorn. So if you're familiar with your astrology chart, you can check out, do I have any planets around 4 degrees of Capricorn? If you do, it could be a little more intense for you, especially because this is an eclipse. So it's not just a normal new moon, it's a full eclipse. So we have a couple things happening at this time. There's some connections to Jupiter here, there's some connections to Uranus, so I kind of get the sense that it could be twofold. New moons are always a time for intention setting, but with that Jupiter and Uranus influence, I feel like there could be sudden things happening but it could be something like a sudden flash of insight, and you're like, oh wow, I really don't want any of that other stuff I was working towards in 2019. Actually, I'm setting out on a totally new course for 2020. Or maybe you have the spark of a new idea, something that's totally out of the box for you, and you're like, oh, I'm surprised I even thought of that, or that I would even be interested in something like that. So I just want you to pay attention. And I know next week's a little crazy if you do happen to celebrate Christmas. I know Hanukkah starts tomorrow too, like a lot of family time, a lot of stuff going on, but I really am going to encourage you, try to take a few minutes of alone time wherever you can get it. If you do happen to be visiting friends or family, because it really is a potent time for each of us individually to kind of go inside ourselves and be like, what is coming up for me right now? Paying attention to your dreams. Is anything playing out for you in your dreams? Do you keep having a recurring dream or thought? Or do you see a theme kind of arriving in your life? Because with this Jupiter-Uranus energy connecting to the eclipse, it can be like the sudden arrival of new information, new ideas, that type of stuff. With the energy of the eclipse, it's interesting. There may be some endings that happen, which is interesting. You would think typically full moon is more about endings because it's about culmination. Not always necessarily so. I have found that with the new moon, because it's a time to start a new cycle or to set intentions for a new cycle, sometimes there tends to be an ending that happens right around that time to open a door for you to set the intention around something new. Based on the type of eclipse that it is, this can potentially play out in relationships. Not necessarily meaning romantic, but family relationships or friend relationships as well. So just be aware if you know that some type of ending needs to happen, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm never talking to you again, but it could just be an ending of a pattern that you've held with a family member for a long time, and then next week you are with them and you're like, yeah, no, this isn't working for me anymore, type of thing. So just pay attention to what feels like it needs to shift, what feels like it's done and you've played it out. Therefore, maybe some of the intentions that you set can be connected to, okay, if that's done, so what do I want to bring in next, type of thing. So paying attention to how relationships are unfolding next week. And because there is a connection to this specific asteroid too, like there could be a little bit of, it might not feel totally great if there is a relationship confrontation or ending of some sort, but just know that, like anything, if that happens, it's always for the best for you personally. But yeah, just being aware next week that it's a great time to set intentions, and it's okay to set lofty intentions too, because with that Jupiter influence, it's going to make us pretty optimistic. Jupiter is about having total faith and confidence in your ideas, and you're like, it just can't fail because it just won't, you know? So I feel like that's a really beautiful energy that we're gonna have coming in. Even with this eclipse bringing a strong energy with it, we're also gonna have that to help keep us focused on the future and excited about the future, I think, yeah? So that's happening on Christmas night, that new moon eclipse. But then a little bit later on, January is like kind of a doozy. I'm really excited to see what happens in January. And about when I say a doozy, I just mean that there's a lot of energy. And depending on what's in your chart, you know, anytime I like to give this caveat, because for some people, the planets are going to be sitting right on top of something that you have in your chart, and it's going to light that up probably. For other people, if you've got nothing in Capricorn, you might be like, oh, didn't really feel it that strongly. So take that with a grain of salt. But starting January 12th, we have, well, not starting, this energy's been building probably definitely for at least 6 months, if not more, but the culmination of this. So in the sky, Saturn and Pluto, which obviously in real life are like millions of miles away from one another, but from Earth's perspective, it looks like they're gonna line up. So if we were to look at one of the planets in the sky, we would see the other one right next to it. And this is pretty significant in astrology. This alignment, they're coming together in Capricorn. That has not happened since the year 1518. So, I mean, it's not something that, happens all the time. What's really cool about this is these dual energies. Pluto's energy is kind of about destruction in a sense, but destruction in the service of evolution, of deep change that pushes you towards something better. Doesn't always feel great. Like I always think of the Pluto as like, we're just gonna burn everything down. And then Saturn comes along, and Saturn rules Capricorn. So it's that energy of structure, of hard work, of building something new, of putting your energy into something that you're passionate about. So it's kind of like at the same time that we have Pluto maybe, shaking some things up in our life, we have that Saturn energy of, okay, so from the ashes, what then do we have the space to build something new? So what's very interesting is we're seeing this on a global level right now, because since Capricorn is about hierarchy, authority, structure, we're seeing a lot of this play out in worldwide. Government stuff is a big connection to Capricorn, and obviously in our own country, we can see that there's like a hoopla happening right now, but in other countries around the world as well. So I'm super interested to see how this continues to play out, especially knowing that we have this Pluto wanting to kind of destroy the current idea of what is a good hierarchy, what is good structure, and then Saturn saying, once we destroy it, now let's build something else that works better for where we are right now. So that's kind of on a global scale. Everyone's going to be experiencing this, and like I said, we can already see it happening. However, what's interesting then is to think about what does that pertain to in your own life? And it's going to be different depending on where in your chart you have Capricorn, because the chart has kind of 12 sections as we move across the whole circle of your chart. And for some of us, it might be, I did a reading for someone last weekend where it was happening in her first house. The first house is all about yourself, how you want to present yourself to the world, how you want people to view you and to see you. And she's feeling that in a big way. She said to me at the beginning of the reading, she's like, I just feel like I'm kind of wanting to like reinvent myself lately. And I was like, well, that seems perfect. I was like, I feel like the energy is very supportive of that. But yeah, you might have it in the house of your career, the house of your home, your structure, your family, your traditions. You might have it in the house of partnership. So it could be in a different place for each of us. So it would be interesting to kind of check out your chart, and we can chat after if you don't know how to get a picture of your chart. I can show you where to find that. But yeah, this energy's been building like definitely for 6 months, and it's gonna peak on January 12th. So right about the middle of the month. What's also cool about that though is 2 days before that, on January 10th, we have a full moon. So it's like, that is a big week. My advice during that week would be like, don't overschedule yourself, because if you're really feeling it, then you're just gonna be like, oh my God, that might be hard for you to like be doing life at the same time. So I would say keep it to the bare minimum the week of January 10th. But yes, so this full moon, the full moon's always in the opposite sign of where the sun is. So since the sun is in Capricorn, we're gonna have a new moon eclipse in Capricorn on Christmas. The corresponding full moon on January 10th is in the sign of Cancer. I know we do have at least one Cancer here. So this one is really interesting. It's gonna be right near that Saturn-Pluto thing and happening only 2 days apart. So I just feel like that energy is gonna be compounded, and the full moon is a great time when it's in the sign of Cancer to evaluate connections to your family of origin, to evaluate tradition, to evaluate like family lineage and whether there's karma that's been passed down through the family lineage that you might be experiencing personally. That would be a really good time to reflect on those things. And a full moon can be an ending of sorts, right? So it's like we can appreciate everything that is familiar to us, everything that our family has given us, etc. But then also it might be time to release some of those things if they don't fit for you. Coming back to that idea of destruction and rebuilding with Pluto and Saturn, same thing with the moon. Typically the sign of Cancer is about family, tradition, lineage, what's really comfortable for you, what's familiar for you, but maybe not necessarily, or something, energy that isn't challenging in a way. So we want to think about the juxtaposition between like, yes, it's great to be comfortable, familiar, and feel good, but is that necessarily moving us towards whatever our goals are in 2020? What is in our highest good for this upcoming year? If that makes sense. Yes. So Christmas Day, big day. January 10th, 11th, 12th, and pretty much throughout that whole week, very big week there, which is exciting.